Hello and welcome back to the Inverted Castle, a Metroidvania enthusiast podcast. I'm your host, but a humble cog farmer from the Sprocket Fields, Eric Fox, and with me as always is a man who knows exactly how much longer I have to live, Tom Blight.
And I need to give you some crack to prolong your life.
I mean, I'll take the crack regardless. But anyway, we're talking about an indie game released at the time of this episode's release, probably almost a full year, Unsighted, a game from 2021 by the Brazilian duo Studio Pixelpunk.
Yeah, it's their first game, I think.
First game, and honestly, coming out swinging, starting the show with a showstopper. Spoiler alert, I quite enjoyed my time with this one.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. There's one thing that's really nagged me that I'm going to get right out at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they call it Unsighted?
So, I read an interview a while ago now. Obviously, they're from Brazil, so English isn't their first language. And they're kind of just going for something unique, but represented disappearing from one's community, no longer being visible kind of thing. I think they expressed some tongue-in-cheek regret at the name they chose, but for me personally, I kind of like how a little awkward, but it's unique.
Yeah, so Unsighted is also the name of the game's essentially zombies. They're robot zombies, but they're zombies. And I kept hoping there was going to be some explanation about why they're called Unsighted. And it just never got it. It's just a thing.
It's just the keyword for going insane / feral / losing your sense of sentience, which we should probably explain what the basic setup of this story is.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Dark Souls. Okay, that's reductive. But yeah, I definitely was thinking about Dark Souls a lot during this game.
I can tell that the developers were too, in addition to Metroid and Zelda, but we'll get into that. Do you want to start us off with a quick background on the story?
Yeah, so the premise of the game is at some point that I'm not quite clear how long ago it was, but it's fairly recent. A meteor came and struck whatever planet we're on. And the meteor had a weird side effect of making all of the unthinking automatons, making them sentient. And they're thinking, feeling people in a way that they were not before. They were machines that follow instructions before.
Yes, and the game makes it pretty clear, these are persons. It's not going to get into, what the nature of consciousness is and how, valid they are. It's very clear from the get-go, these are our people.
Yeah.
And when this happens, the humans, for the most part, freak out and leave, with a select few staying behind as sort of allies, scientists and whatnot, to kind of help the now newly babies, almost, as they kind of learn, how to live. They kind of help them out.
Yeah. And then the humans come back with violence in their minds, I guess. And as part of the war that comes out of this, they lower a tower down onto the meteor, which blocks its MacGuffin magic.
Anima.
Yeah, which was giving the automatons the sentience. Some of the automatons still have sentience juice built up in them, and it's never quite given a reason why some people have more than others. But I don't know, maybe some people spent more time closer to the meteor than others.
It's not particularly important the why, just so much as part of the conceit of this game is all of your buds from way back, all the NPCs, all the ones that have unique designs and characters, personalities, and whatnot, they've got a time limit. And every time you're speaking to them, you've got this countdown going of how many hours they have left until they basically lose their minds and become unsighted. Including you.
Yeah, your timer is ever present every time you transition screens, and whenever you die, and so on.
Yeah, so the goal is to basically get into that tower and fix whatever they got cracking up after collecting 5 unique things to make the big weapon to basically allow you to do that.
Yeah, so I guess that's the other somewhat important detail, is there's these black eye monsters, which I kind of hoped were going to be tied into the Unsighted thing a little more directly in lore.
They're tied into what the humans are doing rather than what's happening with the robots, because the let's just say they're organic matter rather than synthetic.
Yeah, so the automatons can't seem to hurt these. They showed up sometime after the humans put the tower over the meteor and seem to come from the tower, and they're a major obstacle in storming the tower.
You'll see them around, and generally speaking, you can kill them from the get-go. Once you know how to, like, approach them, it's not terribly difficult, but they're presented and, like, especially when you're first starting the game, you're meant to either just, in the prologue, lose to them, and later just kind of run.
Yeah, I didn't figure out that you can actually fight them without the MacGuffin sword until the very end of the game when I was doing a side quest thing where you have to give up the MacGuffin sword temporarily.
Yeah, you were doing essentially like post-game at that point, because you never have to, aside from side stuff. But regardless, you play this game as the character named Alma. She is a warrior bot that was created after the meteor initially hit. And your main motivation, aside from, saving the world, but mostly you're trying to find your girlfriend Raquel, who at some point, as you kind of like piece together your memories, saved you, went to the tower, disappeared, and kind of seems to have been corrupted somehow.
Yeah, that stuff, I'm not sure that stuff actually made very much sense to me in hindsight once I finished the game.
Really?
But I don't know.
I thought it was pretty direct, but like not detailed, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's just like some of that, like, oh, why is this figure taunting me, didn't feel like it quite connected once I reached the end.
It's not particularly important. Like, pretty much all of the story is in flashback. It's not a particularly long game, even if there's quite a bit of lore if you really want to really dig into it. Mostly it's just a simple story of trying to save the world in time and save those closest to you, which I think works pretty well for the scale of what this game's going for.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Speaking of saving the people closest to you, I feel like the ethics of this game are fascinating.
Yeah?
In that, like, there are so many perverse incentives presented in the game. And also things that I thought the game was going to judge me for, and then it doesn't. So you can let people die, right? Just straight up, oh, I have the life-giving medicine, the meteor dust, which I compared to crack in the intro, right? And there's also an affection system. That affection basically just goes up every time you give someone meteor dust.
Which makes sense. If you can provably say, like, this thing will extend your life, I'm going to be rather a bit more kind to you.
Yeah. The funny thing to me is that I kind of felt like the game was incentivizing me to pump meteor dust into a person to get the item they give me for maximum hearts, and then just forget about them.
That is the, I guess, most efficient method if you're being very utilitarian.
If you're an awful person like me.
And this goes even further if you use the Scythe Lady's abilities to then steal their time. You've already gotten the reward, and you've pumped up their amount of time they have. You can then steal that for yourself if you really want to, if you go to her and say, this person's no longer necessary.
Yeah. I mean, so I played very slowly at first.
You did. I can say categorically we had very different first runs, I guess.
And in particular, the first dog I used a lot. I napped whenever it wanted a nap.
Sorry, dog?
Yeah, dog.
Yeah, dog. There are dogs in here this game.
Sorry. Yes, there are.
I know what you're talking about, but you just said, yeah, I used the first dog, naturally, like you do in every video game.
That's fair. So the dogs are like combat assistants?
Basically, yeah.
I don't have a great way to describe them other than that. But they also have their own affection, which is built up by feeding them, by petting them, and by napping with them.
Yep, napping takes time.
Yeah, napping takes 3 hours of in-world time, which started to add up, and I was like, ooh, I should not have done this. I do not need the crutch of this dog.
Yeah, the first time I saw nap takes 3 hours, and then the dog had this little animation that says it's sleepy, I'm like, well, back to the village for you. I cannot... See, I was cruel in that way. Some people would... I think there are two ways to approach this of, obviously we gotta save the people, So I'm sorry, dog, I can't give you the affection. And then there's others which are, the only thing I care about in this world is this pupper.
Yeah, I started out napping every time he wanted a nap, and I was like, you know what? I don't actually need this dog. Go home. And then started feeling the time crunch, which then led to me using the Reaper to steal the time of everyone who I had already gotten to full affection.
Uh-huh.
So
So we're going to get back into the Reaper later, because there's quite a bit more with her than I think you probably were able to access.
yes, but yeah, literal Hitler over here, stealing people's time the moment that they are done being useful to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you gave me a thing that replaces your utility, that's it. You're dead. I'm taking your time. And I think I finished the post game with like 10 hours left or something. It was not long. Actually, no, I did put on Explorer mode when I was at 10 hours and didn't have any dust left.
Yeah. Explorer mode being an optional toggle for if the concept of this time limit stresses you out and you just don't want to deal, you can just flip it on, no fuss, no muss, and then meteor dust, aka crack cocaine, simply becomes just an affection meter.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a solid approach. That's pretty much what I did for post game, which was, okay, flip on Explorer mode. Let's actually see the breadth of content that's here. For my first run, I didn't lose a single NPC.
Oh, la-di-da. Mr. Not losing people over here.
So the game world is like laid out as a Metroidvania. The 5 different zones you go into, like the main like dungeon areas, are more laid out like a Zelda dungeon. And the combat itself is kind of hacky slashy with a Sekiro-like parry system.
Yeah, it's very Hyper Light Drifter to me.
Yeah, whereas I think Hyper Light Drifter focused a bit more on dodging, if I recall correctly. This one really wants you to learn to parry or find an alternate version of like addressing its combat, which it does have. In my first run, I did use more projectile-heavy approach.
Oh, I did not touch the projectiles. I went full parry.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Full parry, strongest weapon. But I found a chip, which is just a like a buff you can equip, which when you swing your sword, it reloads your gun, or rather, when you hit with your sword, it reloads with your gun. And I found a sword that is lightning elemental. Like, this game's got systems in this combat. Lightning elemental, which when you hit someone with it, it reduces their defense. And so I'm swinging with my sword to reload, reducing their defense, and I'm already at melee range, so I then use my shotgun, and I never have to reload.
Nice.
It was very fun to play this way.
Yeah, I didn't experiment with that as much as I would have liked. I was very bad at weaving the ranged attacks into the fighting, so I mostly just stopped shooting guns. I never got one of the reload timings. I'm so bad at those.
The reload it's active reload, and like I think it was at least popularized in Gears of War. Hit reload and then tap it again at just the right moment to speed up the pace. I thought it was fine, but once I got that drifter chip to auto reload, it felt really good, and I could focus on dodging. But parrying in this game is quite nice. It feels good. Enemies have really clear tells, but they have different timings depending on which enemy, and certain bigger guys require several in a row before they get stunned.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me not exploring the combat system is enough, but I also felt like parries were necessary. Like, you couldn't not parry. Your damage output would be terrible.
You can get damage output up pretty nicely, especially if you gear towards that with the chip system. Like, if you just pump up either your strength or your like gun damage, take risks with being low health and getting a damage buff that way. But parrying is like, it's easy enough that I think people should just do it anyway, especially versus bosses.
Yeah, I felt, especially with the post-game stuff, that there was no strategy that was dealing like any damage other than parrying. So maybe I was doing stuff wrong. I did discover that I had not been maximizing my damage during post-game boss fights.
Probably, yeah. Just now knowing what the speedrunners do, yeah, it's mostly maximizing parry damage. That's the most efficient way.
Yeah.
Parry damage, spin attack, highest damage axe you can find.
Yeah, so I did not realize that the spin attack would also stack with the parry, and had not been spin attacking things. after I had stunned them from the parry.
See, I think that's just a failure of imagination on your part. You can also fire your gun at them while they're stunned and it won't take them out of stun, so a lot of the time, gun is just free extra damage. It doesn't take stamina.
I also did not realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of just a value add for the most part, but if you want to like kind of steer towards ranged options, you can do that. Especially if, like, for whatever reason, the timing is just hard, can't get the rhythm, you can do it, but like, I was able to do the 100 parry challenge in a row.
Oh yeah. I never went back and tried to complete that.
Yeah, it's not terribly difficult. Once you land a parry, time slows down so you can like land the next one a bit easier, although it might throw out your timing. But like if you go too early, you still get a block off, which as long as you've got stamina still, won't stagger them, but you won't get hit.
Yeah. Also, parrying gives you full stamina.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the ways to like really keep your aggression going. But that's kind of what my approach to this game was, which was very aggressively. I gave up on 100%ing my first run. Just like, okay, that's clearly not what the game's going for. And the best way to get meteor dust is to go to places I haven't been yet, so may as well go critical path. And I identified the lowest time remaining person and kind of just pumped them up with meteor dust. Turned out to be the old grandmother robot.
Yeah, Granny Cogs.
I think her name's Teresa, and she farms cogs. Cogs being a different temporary buff you can slap on yourself for like boosting attack, stamina, defense, what have you, which I didn't engage much in my first playthrough.
Yeah, I basically only touched the ones that could prevent damage or revive you.
Yeah, same. So, like, she was, even in my estimation, the least useful NPC to me personally, and I still was like, you and me till the end, ride or die. And somehow managed to make it, although it was very tight at the end. I think she might have had 20 hours left total on the winning run, and if time's always moving, even when you die, it's not like you reload a save. It's that's time spent, so I was very happy to have gotten that.
Yeah, I definitely had killed her and several other people by the ending.
Yeah. Who are your victims?
It's a lot of them. Her. I should really remember names better. General store girl that has a crush on Alma.
Anna?
Yeah, Olga, the blueprint girl. BB-42.
The blacksmith?
Yeah, the blacksmith. Master Celica, whatever her actual name is. The
teaches you parries.
Teaches you parries person. Yeah. And then I think I had gotten lazy about reaping people, and some people like the fishing person and the wandering merchant had gone unsighted without me interacting.
Oh, that's just wasted time there.
Yeah.
You should have been more brutal.
I was in the middle of a dungeon. I didn't want to leave to go eat them.
Wow. Still can't believe you just reaped them.
I needed the time. But yeah, definitely some interesting ethical stuff in that. Not actually that bad of an ending from just reaping people. I mean, like, they replace people's specific, this is what this person does.
Yeah, it's a kind of a Majora's Mask style ending where for everyone you helped or, yeah, like was still available, they have just like a one sentence vignette.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're not available, there's a one sentence vignette that just replaces their name with like the general we kind of thing.
Oh, okay. I actually have not seen any of that. Like my first playthrough, I think in-game time was about 4.5 hours. Like time only runs when you're out of a menu and out of a cutscene, so the actual time was probably much larger, but...
Yeah, man, I'm way slower than you. I'm pretty sure my final time was like 12 hours.
It's one of the things that was really cool that I found about it was that it actually leveraged our ability to find the critical path instead of just being something to avoid it at all costs at every moment.
I mean, I still did avoid it at all cost at every moment.
I'm sorry.
Which is maybe why so many people died. Because I was too busy making sure that I got all the chests.
I got all the meteor right that I saw. The meteor dust.
Yeah, and like, there were a couple times where I was like, wait, can I go get that dust now? No, I'll come back
You
later.
probably could, but yeah.
At least one of them, I don't know how you would have done it without the double hook shot.
Well, yeah, I guess like knowledge from the future makes it so that all things are available from the get-go.
Yes, which is interesting. So there's a crafting system in this. It is
Yeah.
almost entirely vestigial.
If you want to craft cogs, like the temporary buffs, they're very cheap in terms of resources, so that's mostly where that goes.
Yeah. What I mean by that is you can just buy or find blueprints fairly easily, and if you do random onto an item, it gives you the blueprint for it.
Yeah.
But there is a like Minecraft-esque put things in this grid and maybe it'll turn into an item, but if it's not an item, then you'll have just wasted those items.
Yeah, experimenting isn't a huge thing except for the cogs, which are all just the same design with different resources. Just put them all in a cross.
Yeah. So that allows you, when you start a new game, to just take your knowledge from a previous game or just look stuff up.
There is an option. You can do New Game Plus, which is just you keep all your stuff, or you can do New Game Extra, which is the same thing as a new, like regular start from scratch file, except you have blueprints for all of the major traversal things. But also, because those are just available, if you start a new game without it, if you just know what those blueprints are, again, from looking it up or from checking them out in the New Game Extra, you can just start the game with everything that you would need.
Yeah.
Which makes the speed run a lot of fun.
But I don't know. I only really touched the crafting for disposable syringes.
That's where most of them go in a first playthrough, I can pretty confidently say.
Speaking of which, guess what achievement I don't have? The one for having a second permanent syringe.
You never made a second one? Oh, right, because you had a dearth of meteor dust.
Yeah, I did have a dearth of meteor dust. I bought the disposable syringe blueprint from her and then killed her for time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't think I crafted a second one until post-game anyway as well.
I did eventually run out of the materials needed for disposable syringes and had to go find which general store person was still alive in order to buy more of the pop cans.
Seems to me like your bloodthirstiness cost you time in this situation.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But that was like right at the end while I was doing the post game. I was like, oh, I don't have more of these. That's a problem.
Yeah, so coming at this game from a certain perspective, you can have a different experience. For me, it was basically a gateway drug. I think we have a theme for this episode. A gateway drug into speedrunning, because it, like, throughout the entire game, that's like kind of where my mind was at. Just trying to think of, like, you know, doing this as fast as possible because you got that time crunch always on the back of your mind. Gotta go fast, but also you're learning things that you could do always, but not until later does it actually like kind of explicitly like spell it out.
Oh yeah.
For one thing, you get the high jump boots pretty early on. It's like if you're following the critical path, you'll find the high jump boots pretty much first, but they don't tell you can wall jump with them, which allows you to like really scale things that normally would just be insurmountable as long as they're close enough together.
Yeah, and you have the stamina to maintain.
There's also a secret ability where if you double tap the run button, you instantly recharge all your stamina.
Yep, that was very useful in the end boss.
Sure was. It's useful everywhere.
I found it especially useful against the end boss. I don't know, there was a lot more parry opportunities, or I just wasn't depleting my stamina quite as much for anyone else.
Anytime you have less than 0 stamina, you should be using stamina because you can just pop it back, and it's fairly quick, although time it wrong, you will get smashed. But
yeah, I figured out the wall jump pretty early.
Oh, you sequence broke, you son of a bitch.
But I didn't actually use it to get anywhere interesting. Maybe there was better things I could do with it, but like I think I only used it to get like one treasure in downtown. And I was like, oh, that's cute.
Oh, that's
cute.
Wonder
if that's ever going to be useful at some point. And then it told me how to do it, and I was like, oh, huh. All right.
Yeah. There are also certain breakable walls, which you can like wait until you get the spinner thing to like kind of crack into them, but any explosive will do.
Yeah.
So you can get the rocket launch or grenade launcher early and kind of expand where normally you can go. Although, spoiler alert, there's a not so much a glitch, but a trick you can do with the wall jump, where if you immediately reverse direction with a jumping attack, you can just climb on top of them.
Huh.
Yeah. They are not obstacles in the least.
I see. Yeah, I also, because I was just buying weapons as I had money for them, I was like, oh, hey, grenades. I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I wonder if these grenades can break this. Or I think there's a tooltip that might actually spell it out.
I think it spells it out if you're paying attention, but you don't need to before the spinner, so.
Yeah. The spinner, I don't know how I feel about the spinner.
I love the spinner. The spinner is probably one of my favorite things about the game.
I wish I could remap it.
I guess, like hitting jump in the air, right?
Yeah, the number of times that I accidentally engaged the spinner while trying to wall jump was just too high.
That never happened to me.
And also, I guess, panic button mashing during fights, where it's like, oh yeah, I was trying to dodge, and I mashed dodge twice, and now I'm in this spinner, and everything's going chaotic.
I had the panic button a couple of times, definitely, but also I kind of treat that as I should probably be more
I mean, yes, but
intentional about my inputs. I never had it with the wall jump, because like wall jumping is like you're waiting for a very specific part of the animation before reversing and jumping again.
Yeah, I guess I was doing it wrong.
How dare you? I will brook no kind of criticism towards this game, which is clearly perfect in every way. How dare you?
Clearly perfect. Oh, I guess when we're talking about... this isn't really sequence breaking or failing at sequence breaking, it's just kind of funny. I did not figure out how to get to the ice shuriken until like the very end.
What is the ice? Where was the ice shuriken?
It's in the aquarium in the, I want to say the upstairs on the right hand side, and you have to go outside and hit a switch which is behind a tree.
Okay, yeah.
I missed that switch was behind the tree, and I was like, oh, I wonder when that door's opening. And then it never did, and I went to at it from the other side and was like, oh, you're supposed to get to it from there. Okay. Alright, well, I guess I'll figure it out later. And then, while I was in the post-game and post having looked up things, which we should talk about,
yeah,
I was going to get the stuff that I needed to get from the secret areas in there, and figured that one out. I was like, oh.
It's just a switch that's like obscured enough, like in an area that like I also missed it. I think I also had to look it up, but I can't remember exactly.
But yeah, having that would have made a lot of the places where the water starts actually moving a lot easier.
Yes, but you can also just skip across it.
That's true.
One of the things this game does is kind of like hint at its secrets through its achievements, where it'll say things like, you skipped across the water a number of times and show a picture of the spinner, and then that clues you in. Oh, that's what the spinner can do.
Oh, wait. Actually, I don't think I ever actually discovered this. You can skip across the water with the spinner?
Yeah. Yeah, so like the entirety of the aquarium is kind of getting ice grenades, which allow you to like make platforms in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of doing that, like a dog without brains, you can also just use the spinner attack with pretty specific rhythm to just constantly bounce above the water, also regaining stamina. And like, the world's your oyster.
Woof woof.
Like a human man who wears pants.
Woof woof, I am a dog without brains, and must fire ice grenades everywhere. Occasionally, I will fail to reload, and then realize that I'm running out of ice grenades halfway through. Definitely happened to me.
Yeah? Oh yeah, same. Like, obviously, like, I didn't check out these achievements till, like, after I'd beaten the game, and, like, skip across the... Oh, no. It's one of the things I love about the spinner, like we were talking about earlier, how you weren't sure how you felt about it. It's my favorite thing, it's my favorite movement option in a long time in any game.
I don't know, I just did not like it. I didn't like using it against enemies. It also did piddly damage, so why bother?
Oh yeah, it's not an attack option, but it's like pretty much from Zelda Twilight Princess. Except they made it fun to use and didn't pretend that it could realistically do damage unless you really stacked that one chip that boosts it. But honestly, you kind of ping-pong with enemies enough, and no, it's just a really fast-moving, skip across water, even like if you intend to use it to like get out of like the way of something, yeah, it's the fastest long range kind of option. I don't know. I just found every aspect of this game fun to control to the point where I was basically done with the game in terms of 100%ing it by 10 hours, 10, 12 hours. Steam tells me I'm now up to like 29 hours.
That's a lot more.
So I did, like, not only did I do everything, I kept doing everything. For the first time, I think, again, this game kind of gateway drugs you into speedrunning. I did actually learn the route, and I did all of the tricks, and I think I've done like 8 or 9 runs now. I've gotten my time down to about 22 minutes in-game, 40 minutes out of game.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think the route itself is specifically just, like, it's active. You get all your movement things just right. The tricks aren't too terribly difficult to perform. Again, this is pretty early on, all things considered, in a game. Like, it's not like a SNES game that's obviously been hacked at for decades. So we'll see what the future holds.
Does that run actually involve forming Space Sword, or do you just go directly to tower, defeat guys because you can?
So you can kill the guys, but the things that block the hallway do actually require the space axe in our case.
Ah, yes. The superior form of Space Sword.
Yeah, so like going back to what the achievements kind of hint at, there's an achievement for getting the high jump boots during the prologue. You do that in the speedrun. There's also one that's that we don't do, where you can get one of the meteor shards, one of the 5 MacGuffins, beat a dungeon in the prologue. The only one available is the factory, which is usually the last one you do. But you can, again, if you know what the recipe is for the double hook shot, get right in there, do these weird double jumps, and there's one glitch that's kind of weird called a telehook. So what you do is, I think it's pretty cool, where you swing your sword, and before you're done swinging the sword, you hit both the hold the sword button and also your hookshot button, so that you're charging your melee weapon into a spin attack while the hookshot's just constantly firing. Then you redirect the hookshot somewhere else. You can do this at your leisure while you're holding both. And then when you release the spin attack, it messes with your position data in a way that it kind of just warps you somewhere else, which is how you can skip past some flame barriers in the factory or skip right to the boss in the museum. It's pretty cool. It's not hard to do, and you can practice it pretty much wherever. I think it's one of those things that they're still kind of exploring on how else we can use this to break the game, but there are certain places that have really consistent setups.
See.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. There are also 2 bonus modes where there's Dungeon Raid, which is just randomly selected chunks of the map. It's a roguelike kind of thing. You go in there, get random buffs, weapons, and whatnot, and try and beat it as fast as possible. Go through stage boss, whatever. And then there's also a boss rush, which if you want to just fight the guys, again, each time you beat one, get a random upgrade. That's there too. I also got the achievements for speedrunning those.
Yeah, I didn't actually touch those.
You kind of don't need to if you're not broken and enamored like I am. But I don't know. For some reason, this game's just traversal and combat mechanics just really clicked for me. It was refreshing to approach the game not from I need to avoid what it's trying to tell me at all costs, and actually meet it in its own terms, and I think doing that was really good. I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed it as much if I had started on Explorer mode.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I haven't revisited it, but as a kid, I really didn't like Majora's Mask for time limit stuff.
Yeah, it's been my favorite game.
Yeah, so I guess it's not surprising that you're a big fan of this.
Yeah, this is entirely consistent. Especially once I started playing it, I started seeing the parallels to that game. I don't think it's as deep. Again, none of the NPCs really are explored terribly deeply outside of Alma and Raquel.
Yeah.
Which I think is fine for the scope this game goes for. I would love to play the 60-hour RPG version of this setting, to really dig deep into the nature of consciousness and the morality and such. But I think as a sort of style and set dressing for what is intended to be a fairly brisk run through of some more frenetic combat and exploration, having a Zelda game with that time limit again Oh boy, it really makes dungeons feel good when you get the puzzles quickly, which obviously, if you don't, has the effect of it feels bad when you aren't doing it quite as quick.
Yeah, I never really struggled with the puzzles. I guess for some of the post game ones, I was like, ugh, why is my time limit ticking while I'm doing these? But those weren't too bad.
I think the time limit really kind of elevates this, and I think a lot of the elements that this game borrows from other games, clearly like parrying, Dark Souls style, when you die, get back to your body to get your money back, Zelda items like the hook shot and spinner. I think they're all either adapted really well to this isometric 2D style, or just they do what the Zelda item did, but better in the case of the spinner. I remember the spinner being a huge letdown in Twilight Princess just because of how slow it was.
Yeah.
But this one, it turned it into the best means of getting around, even if water's in your way. And it feels good because it's skill-based as well. It's great. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Speaking of Dark Souls again.
Yeah.
So in Dark Souls, there's this conceit where everyone is slowly turning into a zombie and going insane.
Yes.
And it's supposed to be kind of in that game, like the more you die, the more insane you are going. That's really a story and gameplay segregation thing. I thought this game was interesting because it feels very much not like a story and gameplay segregation thing, right? Like the timers are the people going insane to the point where when somebody's at less than 24 hours and you go and visit them, they have unique dialogue, they have unique poses for like, hey, I'm really feeling like down in the dumps.
Yeah, I think part of that is they're all robots that can like very easily repair their structural wounds, essentially. So like physically, they live a long time. It's their consciousness is what's degrading. That's very directly related to being cut off from what allows them to be people. And as that degrades, they feel that more than they would losing an arm. Or in your case, you yourself will die and then just kind of get reconstituted back at whatever save terminal. But it's like, you're always reminded of this cost time rather than like the actual act of dying is degrading you.
Yeah, hell, in the transition from the prologue, in the dying transition, you lose like your entire lower half.
Yeah.
And they just rebuild you.
Oh yeah, we should probably talk about how good this game looks, in my opinion. Like, the pixel art has certain flourishes that I really appreciate. Like, there's a lot of movement, especially in the portraits of all the characters. When you equip weapons, it shows up on, like, this portrait of Alma. And, like, they have particle effects. Everything's always kind of, like, shifting, moving. There are bits in the story where it's full-on animation, pretty much. Not too many, but when it's there, I thought it looked quite nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember you having very specific hang-ups about pixel art.
This one's alright. I think the shading is a little more flat than I would like.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like every NPC is like one consistent brightness without very much lighting effects, kind of thing. That's a nitpick.
I guess.
They're fine, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can, like, agree in the sense that, like, I didn't notice it and obviously didn't care. And I'm also not an artist, so maybe someone can, like, point out exactly what's going on there. I just know that whatever they were doing worked for me.
I mean, I am not the greatest artist in the world either, but I don't know. It's like, it's alright. I feel like the NPCs could have been a little better looking. The bosses and the enemies, I feel, were at good levels.
Now, when you say the NPCs, do you mean they're like on-world sprites or they're portraits?
They're on-world sprites.
Okay.
I don't know, they were fine, but not incredible. I was also a little disappointed when I visited the first person who had gone unsighted, and rather than that person actually attacking me, they just switch into an enemy. I know it would be a lot of work for something that would not be.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, the amount of extra things that would essentially be a reward for doing poorly. I get that, like, like, they turn into one of the, like, regular enemies that you've been fighting regardless. Yeah, having unique battle sprites for all of these characters is just such a scope nightmare. It'd be nice to see. Like, it's, yeah, obviously that'd be a nice flourish, but I think that's less of a flaw and more of a, one of a cavalcade of things that, like, if given infinite time, I'd love to see.
Yeah, like looking back at these portraits, the portraits are good.
Yeah, I love those portraits. Every character's unique. They're all also, like, very clearly coded to be, like, what would classically be considered minority characters. This game is pretty clear about the general theme of these people are just kind of living their life and being suddenly exploited by a more privileged class, even to the extent of harvesting what keeps them alive.
Yeah, you don't see any enemy humans at any point, but you just know they'd all be white.
You know they'd all be white. They do get theirs, to be fair.
But there was kind of an interesting thing of, why did anybody build these robots these ways? Specifically with Tobias, the robot who loves dogs but has no hands with which to pet the dogs.
Yeah, humans were cruel, is what really comes down to.
Yeah, the humans, there are no main character humans that aren't on your side, and even that one is only appearing in the flashbacks and died at some point while you were in stasis.
Yeah, it's not clear the exact timeline, which I think is fine. I've never been the Wikipedia style of everything needs to be exactly lineated.
Yeah, but like...
humans don't live as long as robots. That's kind of the way it goes.
All the humans that you read data logs from are just huge dicks.
I mean, these are all the ones that specifically came here to do unethical science, so maybe it's a sampling size
Yeah,
problem.
they self-selected.
Only the dicks. Yeah, they're not great, but I think that works for the fairly concise, direct story that they're going for. There's something to be said for couching all of this in the really simple but effective story of, yeah, Alma just really wants to save Raquel. That's kind of like the main thrust for her motivation, and that's fine.
Yes.
We don't really have time to do much else.
Although, let's talk about endings now, I guess.
I guess so.
You never looked at the other endings?
I never looked at the other vignettes for NPCs.
Okay, but did you do the ending where you don't save Raquel?
No, actually, because I couldn't.
Oh.
With the save files I had.
Okay, I'm gonna say 4 different endings, and then there's the vignettes.
Okay.
Which change based on whether or not the person who is involved in the vignette is alive currently.
Yeah.
So there's the Save Raquel ending.
Okay.
There's the Don't Save Raquel ending. Those work out mostly the same. It's just like Alma goes off alone instead of going off with Raquel.
Yeah.
There's both of you die.
I never tried that.
Yeah, you just let the timer go. I watched someone's endings YouTube video.
I didn't think that would have been.
Yeah, no, it's not a game over. It's a non-standard game over in which it just shows everyone else surviving, which has Vana doing most of the narration. And then there's also a version of that if you killed all of the major main characters, in which they're replaced with generic automatons.
Okay. It's the same as the other You Die ending, except everything's generic?
Yeah. Like, there's very little actual content difference between those endings. It's like, no matter what, someone is going to go try to liberate other locations.
Okay, but it's just who does it
Yeah.
is flavored by what you did. It sounds like more or less it's the same ending, except they just made some slight variations.
Yeah, but there's like, the generic NPCs will just be like, we sure do honor that hero that saved us. And Vana specifically remembers your name.
Ah.
Yeah, that's the only real differences.
Okay, that's interesting, but the reason I couldn't, or at least I didn't think I could, get the Leaving Without Raquel ending, because usually, after you beat the final boss, there's like an escape sequence a la most Metroid / Zelda Ocarina of Time, where you gotta like bust your way back through the now exploding tower. You can optionally pick up Raquel, at which slows you down and limits your combat options while you're carrying her, which is a neat sequence. I'm glad I got it on my first playthrough. But if you do an optional thing where if you recall that lady with the scythe who steals time from other people, if you ever use her ability to kill someone, you're kind of locked out of this. But if instead you go through the list of people and choose her twice, she gets mad at you. And you're like, no. And I was just like, no, like, don't kill people. What the fuck? And then you fight her as an optional boss, which if you beat her, you get a card key which access a side area in the tower, get some more lore on her. You also get 10 meteorite dust, which really helps if you're trying to save everybody.
Yeah.
But also, she lets you just kind of skip the ending sequence, where even if you try to just leave without Raquel, she saves both of you anyway, and then the ending plays out.
Oh yeah, that was actually in that person's endings video, and I was like, oh huh.
Yeah, it's actually why the speedrun, for a couple reasons, goes out of its way to kill the Scythe Lady.
Because it just takes like 5 minutes for the escape sequence otherwise.
It ends up being so much faster, especially since you just one-shot Scythe Lady.
Oh, impressive.
Parry her twice, spin attack with all the different buffs. She's done. At this point, you also have the souped-up meteor axe.
I see.
Yeah, it's cool. But also, I think narratively, it's more impactful when you are carrying Raquel out yourself. It was a nice tense moment, a better way to kind of end it off, but I think successive playthroughs love to skip it.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, speaking of that Reaper, so she gives you a blueprint for a clock.
Mm-hmm.
That clock is a little thing in the side/post game.
Yeah, a super secret thing that... Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a crypt sort of under the tower, or like I guess under her chapel, which going through the parts of the crypt you can explore gives you the pendulum.
I think it's the pendulum, but yeah, it's like part of the clock thing. Like at this point, okay, where are the other pieces?
Yeah, so you find a clock and you find a pendulum. And the pendulum appears in your crafting materials, and you're just like, wait, what? This is a pretty obscure puzzle. Like, I did not see any hints towards this except the clock and the pendulum existing, and really had no idea where to go from there. So I had to just look it up.
It is probably the most god dang it thing that I've seen, and it's hard for me to defend other than this is still like extremely extra bonus type thing. But like, it's there, and if you're doing the crypt, which is the hardest dungeon type area in the game, you're going to want to know what's behind this clock. And it turns out that it's across all of the entire game map, there are certain secret areas that are not hinted at, some behind chests themselves. It's just a wall that looks like a wall, except you just kind of run into it, and it's not. And you got to find, I think it's like 4 pieces plus the blueprint.
Don't actually need the blueprint. Ask me how I know. It's because I used her to kill people, so I didn't have the option of fighting her.
So you had to look that up.
So I had to look that up, and you can just put it into the crafting map, and it works.
As long as you look up what the blueprint is.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it right, then you just lose all the pieces.
Yep.
Sorry, fucko. But yeah, it's unfortunate. You just kind of got to look it up.
Yeah. So that turns out to be a time travel thing, which is not really explained within the universe why there would be a time travel thing there.
Even like I think the characters are just like, don't think about it too much. It's a kind of a goofy thing, but it allows you to basically revive/restore the time of everybody.
Yes, it brings you back to the very beginning of the time counting down.
Except everything you've done in the world, like the meteorite pieces you've gotten, I think are still collected.
Yeah.
But it allows you to then do the good ending.
Yes, although, if you go to the final boss and fight them again, they now have an extra form, which is much harder.
Much harder, much longer. You gotta be on your shit.
Yeah, and I was a little surprised to see that it did not actually change the ending. I mean, it gives you the good version of everyone's vignette.
Yeah.
Because they're all alive now, but there's no actual reward for that.
Other than the harder final boss.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of Tales of Vesperia, where if you do the optional side quest to get the super weapons before they're unlocked to actually do extra damage, you kind of lock yourself into fighting one of the game's super bosses as the final boss.
Oh boy.
And you can't get rid of them. You're locked in, so it's a fun prank to play on people. If they're playing that game, like, oh yeah, you should definitely do that side quest before you get an ending.
I see.
Also, fun little extra thing you can do is, so to get to the crypt, you have to kind of leave your meteor sword in there. Also, find a way to get around it, but that's what opens up the area. If you leave your sword there and then go try and fight the final boss, it'll call you out, like, oh, you thought you could hide your sins from me? And then it'll be holding whatever weapon you left there, and it'll add an extra attack. Basically, whatever weapon will be constantly flying at you throughout the final boss.
Fun time.
Yeah, there's an achievement for it.
Fair enough. That reminds me, I'm going to complain about what is, in my opinion, the hardest boss in this game. The goddamn crab.
Oh, I think you're right in that it's the hardest boss. I'm going to vehemently disagree that it needs to be hated.
I hate I hate the crab so much.
I like the crab.
And the crab comes back in the crypt for round 2, Super Crab, this time with even more annoying enemies as ads.
Yeah.
I think it's really the ads part that bugs me.
Yeah, if you don't have a setup that can take care of them really quickly, then they'll start to swarm you while you're trying to simultaneously deal with everything the crab is throwing at you. But I think it is a problem that can be solved.
I mean, yes.
I don't know. I thought the design was fine. If you can parry both of its like claw pincers, then that automatically does a whole bunch of damage. And then after they're dead,
I also was not spin attacking after parries for the first iteration of the crab. I learned it during the second iteration of the crab, where I was just like, this guy just has so much health. Ah.
Yeah. Spinning attack. I actually beat him with my drifter shotgun setup. But yeah, parrying both of those, and then once he's in the phase where no longer parried, but always like able to be damaged, just kind of wail on him. Listen, the super crab definitely took a bit too long, but I thought he was fine. As far as design goes, I don't know.
I don't know. It was just like starting to get really frustrating because also I didn't have a great way of killing the 2 enemies that he spawns other than double parry.
Yeah.
In order to be able to one-hit kill them. And then just getting frustrated at trying to double parry at the same time as the beam spam was happening.
Yeah, it's very much a positioning, like something you have to do really quickly, really perfectly. And if you miss your opportunity, it gets chaotic real fast.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I eventually got into the rhythm. I knew where to go. I think it's one of those things where I think this type of design in terms of combat and boss encounter is, if you get it, it's fine. Once you start failing, it gets frustrating really quickly, especially for how long the boss takes to kill. But I think it's like a certain threshold of getting it / getting good. I hate to say it, but I think there is a little bit of a barrier of entry in terms of skill cap for, at the very least, that boss encounter.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, the other ones, just the difference for me between that and the other ones was just kind of ridiculous. Like, the first 2 took like a few tries, and once I had access to disposable syringes, I was able to get them on my first try kind of thing, except the crab.
Oh yeah, and once you start expending like non-renewable resources and then losing,
yeah,
it's a frustrating boss. Like, I think it's somewhat intended to be. It's the super boss of the game outside of alternate final boss, which I think is, since it's mostly just the final boss but more so, you already kind of know how to fight him. Bit less of a problem there.
Yeah. Did it have to be on ice the first time?
Yep. That's what makes it fun.
I hate ice stages.
I think it was done perfectly in this game. Unsighted, world's first good ice dungeon.
I mean, it was fine. The sliding around stuff was not actually that much of a big deal, although that might have just been because I had a very passive style, which involved parrying things, and so it doesn't matter if you slide around, I'm not moving. You're attacking me.
It's a solvable problem. You can approach the ice in a way that makes its gimmick not a problem. Also, I did like, before I learned how to skip, ice grenade timing felt kind of good to get right, of like, chunk, jump, reload, jump.
Yeah.
It felt good, and I think the puzzle design kind of leveraged Zelda's strengths a lot better than most Metroidvanias ever do.
Yeah.
And I'm also one of those nutcases that like sliding block puzzles, so your mileage may vary.
I mean, I don't mind them either.
The ones in the crypt were as complicated as ever gets, and otherwise they don't show up that much, so...
Yeah.
Overall, I think pretty much every aspect for me of this game worked in a way that... It's been a while since I've had such uncomplicated positive feelings to a game.
That's fair.
One that's like clearly leveraging a lot of things I already like, but doing it in a way that makes sense for adapting it for its particular style. Like, I don't think this is a carbon copy of any of the games we've compared it to.
Yeah.
And in many ways, outshines some of their aspects.
I don't know. It's like, I only had time to do one run of it. Apparently my one run was very long.
Yes.
I didn't quite do everything that was possible. Like, I gave up on getting all of Drillo's treasures. I never gave everybody all of the meteor dust to get all of their affection results.
Some of them are quite nice. Some of them are just, you do it because you like the character. Because the guy who likes the dogs He's such a special boy.
Yeah.
He is like a pet unto me.
But yeah, I guess we're moving towards wrapping up.
I think so.
Before we wrap up completely, I guess I should put this in context of other games that came out in 2021 and were award winning.
This game kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Did not get, in my opinion, all of the game awards it deserved. So let's hear what utter detritus of human development did win.
I mean, I heard a fair amount of press about it.
I heard a lot, like, after the fact. It was kind of like, okay, you haven't heard of this, but it's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah. All right, so award-winning games from 2021: Ghost of Tsushima, Monster Hunter Rise.
Okay, I take back my earlier comments about there being no good games. In fact, there is the second best game in this list of all time.
Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. That's the, like, drive karts in real world.
How did that win anything other than biggest waste of time?
I think it was a design award? Game design / game direction.
Sure.
It Takes Two.
It takes too much time to play that game.
That's an interesting game.
I have no idea. I've just decided I've got to insult everything now.
Oh, okay. It's a nice, like, co-op.
I'm punchy this episode.
Resident Evil 4 VR.
Resident Evil, who is this for? VR.
Deathloop.
Death Poop.
Near Replicant version. This is a really long version string. 12247448713 ... This is a remaster of the original Nier.
Took them that many versions to get it right? Pff, garbage.
Which really surprised me that the remaster of the original Nier won a thing. It won...
Best remaster?
No, yeah, it won the music award. I don't know, maybe they redid all the music in it.
Or maybe they're just being really loose about what counts as a game eligible, as long as it released in some form.
I guess. Forza Horizon 5. Resident Evil Village. That was actually for best character or performance for Lady Dimitrescu.
Yeah, it takes a village to raise a baby that could like that game.
Man, this new salty Eric. You're so positive about the game and so salty about everything else.
Yeah, usually I try to find the good in everything, try to be patient about people's opinions. Not anymore. Fucko. New sheriff in town.
Genshin Impact.
Genshin didn't make much of an impact to me.
Pokemon Unite.
Pokemon Unite in my hatred for this game.
Lone Echo 2.
Aw, couldn't find a friend.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Ratchet Clank, I like to ripped it apart.
Oh boy, Returnal.
Yeah, I got no. Sorry, I'm so tapped out. Sorry.
I'm gonna go for I'd Returnal that game.
Back to GameStop.
And Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, see, that one's actually a good game.
No diss for that one.
No notes.
Yeah.
Everything Marvel does is perfect, obviously.
All right, so you were definitely angling towards our stack ranks, talking about your summary thoughts.
Yeah, now that we've gone through other people's notable games,
yeah,
let's talk about the game that made me the happiest this year.
Oh, Metroid Dread? We already talked about that.
So that's what I'm kind of thinking about.
You're thinking of where it goes in relation to Metroid Dread? Which I would remind you is your number 3.
Yeah, and then I think it might go probably 2 slots above that, number 1.
It's your new number 1 above Metroid Prime.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Listen, I gotta compare the one I kept playing after I'd beaten it. I think I've actually played all the way through Unsighted more times than Metroid Prime now, throughout all of time. It's also the one where I tried to do some of the speedrun tech in Prime, didn't care enough for it.
That's fair.
I'm still going to be playing Unsighted, I think, at this time next year.
Nice. Glad that you've discovered a true favorite.
How about you?
I mean, I liked this a fair amount, but I did have dumb complaints about it. I actually like that my slowness through the game made me make choices about murdering people.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you made very different choices than me.
Yeah. By
necessity. Because I would almost was going into this just like, oh, who's ever going to use the Scythe Lady's ability? And then I heard that, yeah, I've been eating people. Like, oh boy.
Yes. That time when you update with your friends and find out that they've gone to cannibalism.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, you're talking about the game. Oh, man. So I'm like, oh, well, that just added an entire half an hour of discussion to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like the game is more interesting when you feel that pressure, right?
Yes.
If you ace the game and you're like, whatever, no pressure, didn't need to worry about it, then yeah,
Well,
not that interesting.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I did feel the pressure. Like, I had to make a decision when the granny was, like, running out of time, down to her last 24 hours, and I'm looking at how much meteor dust I have, how much time I have, thinking, like, can I do this? And committing to the Mr. Perfect run.
Yeah, I mean, she was running out of time for me by, like, the second dungeon.
Oh, yeah. I gave her, like, 10, 12 meteor dusts alone.
Alright, so for me, I'm trying to decide where I want to put it. I liked it.
Yeah.
It did interesting things. It had good, this feels pretentious, ludo-narrative synergy?
Like the opposite of dissonance, assonance?
Yeah.
Or is that also bad?
I don't remember my...
Listen, the ludo and the narrative came together to form something beautiful.
No, assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds.
And you're sure that doesn't apply.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for ludo narrative synergy.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question for me is,
which other game did you have more nits to pick?
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's been a game where you've been like, outside of maybe Hollow Knight, that's been like so positive without any notes whatsoever.
The best. Moi. Yeah, I think I'm looking at, it's either before Environmental Station Alpha or before Symphony of the Night. So my new number 3 or my new number 4.
I see. I mean, I can't make the decision for you, but like, what were your problems with Symphony?
I don't remember. Other than that it doesn't have a forward dash, and therefore...
It has I think it has a weaker elemental system.
Yeah, although...
I mean, it's there, it's very simple. There's just 3, and they all have very specific effects.
I felt like the powered up meteor sword or axe was so much stronger than all of the other weapons that it was kind of disappointing in that I felt like the optimal play was not to engage with those systems once you have the meteor sword.
I mean, you can just have a gun that makes them like electrified or icy or fire.
That's true. I also wasn't using guns.
Yeah, there is an option here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna throw it above Symphony of the Night.
Yay!
I don't know. I'm sure there's someone who's just gonna be grumbling about how we only like things that are Dark Souls, and it's true. We love Dark Souls.
And it's also, hey, y'all got some mad recency bias as well.
Yes.
It's definitely for me.
I mean, we explicitly set this out to be most fun to play now.
No, I'm talking about like whatever the game we're talking about tends to rate higher.
It's true. I mean, over time, I assume this is going to work out. I would also point out that Hollow Knight is from the first episode and remains at my number 1.
Yeah, I'm mostly talking about me. I've changed my number 1, I think, like twice, 3 times now. No, Hollow Knight was number 3, so twice, so.
Yeah, but yes.
But anyway.
With that...
There you have it. Game of the year, every year.
Yeah, what are we playing next? And it's my turn to pick.
Yeah, assign us homework.
And I think we should go not that far back.
Okay.
We're going to go to Ori and the Blind Forest.
Finally.
Which is the first of the Ori games.
Gotta start with the first one. What kind of idiot would start with like the second or the fourth in a series?
I mean, we have played Metroid Prime and Metroid Dread.
And also Dragon Slayer 2 and 4.
Fair, although Dragon Slayer 1 was not at all a Metroidvania, right?
And Dragon Slayer 2 barely counts.
Yeah. So,
But no, I never actually played Ori and the Blind Forest, so...
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we should hit it up.
It's been a blind spot. It's also apparently a good game, so that's also a plus. I'm warning you now, for my next pick, I'm going to try and find some absolute garbage.
Oh, fun times.
Yeah, we've had it too good for too long. Even Dragon Slayer 4 was pretty good, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was surprisingly fun.
Anyway, I think our socials are leaking, so I should probably plug them. If you want to follow us on Facebook, please do. Email any questions, comments, concerns. Tell us how much we suck and how to improve at invertedcastlepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @invertedcastlepea. Think that's all of them?
Yep, that's all of them
Cool
so far.
beans.
Maybe someday I'll create an Instagram and a YouTube channel. I don't know. Probably not. That sounds like a lot of effort.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can do whatever you want. And I'll do whatever I want, which is end this episode. I've been Eric Fox.
And I've been Thomas Blade.
And remember, kids, kill all the humans. They are probably bastards anyway.